You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. As I've been focusing on daily gratitude and even honing in on what we tend to consider the smaller things, the little things, which in their totality are not at all little or even simple, I just wanted to share a few of those with you before I launch fully into this episode, which just a few hours ago, I wasn't sure what it would look like. First, I have returned from my morning walk on the nature trails, and that's very important to me as I feel like I'm reconnecting to something internally inside of me when I take certain routes. There are a lot of sidewalks around my little space of North Texas suburbia here. I used to frequent the neighborhood grids for the hills. Really, having lived in Kentucky for a good chunk of my early life, I wouldn't even call them hills. I would call them slight inclines. But so much of this part of Texas is flat. I still remember when our family was driving around to various towns and cities within the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex that something about this terrain in this part of Collin County called us in. A few more trees, lots of nature trails, and a city slogan of unique by nature, super sweet, super cool. Anyway, two things I wanted to mention before I launch into this topic that came to me during my walk is that we have a thing here every summer that is Saharan dust. I've posted on my Facebook account a few times about this. It's pretty wild. And I had certainly never heard about it during my lifetime in Kentucky because I suppose the dust trail, that is not the official meteorological term, I assure you, didn't reach that area. Here, it's definitely a thing. There are air quality alerts, and a lot of those have to do with smog, yes. But every summer, there's a cloud of dust from the Sahara Desert that just hangs in the sky here. I just returned from my walk and I need to wash my face because it felt a bit gritty. Not terrible, just a thing. It does produce some amazing sunsets, those dust clouds. There is that. Another thing to be grateful for. Now, before I set off on my walk this morning, I ran into one of my neighbors outside in his front yard and I was not going to pretend I did not see that little puppy wobbling around in the grass behind the tree. I could have waved and kept going. The adult in me wanted to keep my walk to a certain time frame, but my inner child was like, oh my God, a puppy. I must stop and ask all of the questions because I know my neighbor has kids in college and I want to know if the puppy is his or theirs or what's going on. So he says her name is Zaya. She's about 5 weeks old, and she's a mix between boxer and I think he said French bulldog. All I could see in her was boxer, and she was so tiny and precious and absolutely amazing. I do love the natural disposition of boxers. They are lovers. We chatted about Zaya for a couple of minutes, and then he picked her up and handed her to me, and I was done, just done. Cradled her on my upright chest like the newborn that she really is, and just loved on her like it was my damn job. Because really it is. Zaya is my inspiration for today's episode because just holding her and cuddling her in my arms for a minute was kind of the kick in the ass that I needed to remind me that your inner child, your innocence, and your pure essence is not always the one that needs to be protected. Many times, she is the one who protects you. Your inner child's identity is not fully and completely made up of the wounds and the scars. She is also your greatest teacher. She or he is also very wise. As Gabby Bernstein says, you are the guru. That's a great little book, by the way. Free with an Audible subscription. A great listen as you're out for your daily walk. You are the guru. You are your own teacher. Let's explore that concept because that's what I was feeling in those brief moments with baby Zaya. And then the time with myself that followed. I have really dug deep into the exploration of the mind and our thoughts and all of those things that I share with you here. However, one thing I'm not sure I have shared much is my exploration into the simplicity, the simultaneous simplicity and the awesomeness of a newborn puppy, kitten, even a human baby. Though we can likely agree that the humans are the neediest of all. I mean, for the sheer reason that it takes us a much longer time frame to potty train and be self-sufficient when many of our animals come straight out of the birth canal ready to walk. I think that's because we humans are born with this innate need to be showered with love. Indeed, our cultures generally do that from the beginning. I think that no matter where you are in the world or what your upbringing is, you can view a baby anything, human, dog, cat, bird, whatever, as being pure and authentic, untouched, unconditioned by the world. And for the most part, animals remain that way, but humans seem to be the ones who really carry their exposure to trauma and resentment. Yet, is it true that only humans are born with the innate need to be showered with love? I don't know if I should even call it a need. What if it's a birthright? What if it's a knowing of worthiness and a trust that it is protected that keeps a puppy in a very chill state, being passed to a stranger who's just walked over into its territory and cooed over it for a minute or two? Zaya was simply curious. She allowed me to cuddle her, and she wanted to smell me. Nothing more, just that simple. I think she knows full well that she's cute as fuck. I think that is reinforced for her with every passing hour with her humans at her new home, that she is safe, she is loved, and that her needs will be met. I think that every human is born with that same knowing, yet it isn't until they have the experiences of life that they might begin to learn otherwise. And we all eventually learn otherwise, don't we? We learn that when we lose the baby fat, the big eyes, and the novelty, like if you're the firstborn and the next sibling comes along, then we have to adjust, maybe start acting out. What do we need to do to get attention since we aren't cute AF anymore? We eventually learn how we need to behave in society and institutions like schools and workplaces because we observe the conditions that are rewarded and those that are punished. We observe and experience said conditions. I've talked about all of this before. I think we're starting to get it. Maybe some of us are waking up to it. Nothing has gone wrong. If you're not awake and you're still navigating the matrix, it is what it is. It's where you are. I just want to offer you today to go back to that inner child with a new perspective, and that is not one that needs to be healed, but one that needs to learn from the child that it is inside of you. Like, bring your learning mind to your most basic, most essential self. What would that look like? Before the world told you that you are not enough, before anyone hurt you, before any of the hardest life lessons happened, who were you before? What was your essence? Did you trust? Were you open and free with your love and adoration? Were you void of your judgments and simply curious? There are varying perspectives out there about what age that occurs, but I know that for years, many years, before I even decided to become a coach, I thought for me that was age 7. I never really knew why, but perhaps on reflection, that is the first trauma that I can recall in vivid detail. And I've since heard that in numerology, our traumas, which are the hardest fucking lessons and perhaps part of a soul contract, our traumas tend to happen in 7-year increments. And if I'm really tuned into that exploration, I can see that. I had my first remembered trauma at 7. Then by 14, I was suicidal. Not just thinking about it, not ideation, but a full-on attempt by age 14. The 7-year-old experience I haven't yet shared, and ultimately in the big picture of things, it's not that much. But in retrospect, I realized that it's something. It's probably what set me up for being at odds with religion, out of alignment with it for most of my life. I was visiting my father for the summer in a farm he was living on in rural Pennsylvania. I loved that farmhouse, actually. I loved the surrounding land that I could wander around. I loved the animals, the small fish pond, all of the trees, the small brook, not a creek. A creek is much bigger. This was really a babbling brook, you all, that I would make the most amazing mud pies in. The tire swing, where I asked Jesus into my heart, and if I'm being completely honest, that was only for the validation and affection I would receive if I did that. It was a fun place to visit, though. Until that year, and I may have been a little older than 7, but that's what my memories are giving me, so I'm going with it. That was when I was running from the vegetable gardens on the upper part of the property, and one of my father's dogs ran from left to right in front of me. I could not stop in time. I could not put the brakes on it. I just went flying in the air and landed on the only piece of rough concrete slab that was on this entire property of what could have been 50 or more acres. I don't know. It was a lot. But I was also little, so my perspective was very skewed. Either way, there was this slab of concrete, and I do mean it looked like it had just been spilled there. It was just this small patch of raw gravel and grayness, which is exactly where I landed after tripping over the dog, and it split my left knee wide open. Well, I was wearing white socks, white shoes, and my recollection is that everything on my left turned red. And long story short, I ended up at the local Messiah College with what amounted to a butterfly bandage and a prayer. That's what happened. If God wanted to heal my wound, He would. There would be no stitches. And I'm not telling you this story to trash my parents in any way for their decisions in the moment, or to say that I'm carrying any resentment for the gnarly scar on my left knee that I still have as a result of that point in time. In fact, quite the opposite. What I'm saying is that my 7-year-old self was very much thinking at the time, what the fuck is this, and why are you not helping me medically, and why am I still bleeding, and there's a time for prayers and a time for action. Seriously, that's what I'm recalling when I think of that simple episode. Yet, instead of listening to my internal wisdom, I listened to all of the adults around me, because our social constructs tell us that children are ignorant, they don't know any better, and the adults have it all figured out. Except it isn't until we reach adulthood ourselves that we realize, no, the fuck, we do not have it all figured out. And if we don't, neither did they. Yet we create these authoritative figures, parents, older siblings, teachers, peers, church leaders, politicians, activists, the media, celebrities, all of the gurus, while we lose ourself in the mix. Who do I follow? Who do I listen to? Who do I trust? And I think this entire journey that we are on is designed to bring us full circle right back to our freaking self. Maybe she's wise at 7. Maybe she's wise at 17. I can assure you, I feel in hindsight, because that is 2020, that I was wiser at 7 than I was at 17. Because I'd already been indoctrinated into all of the trappings by 17. While at 7, I was still curious. I can recall thinking, I don't know, do I believe that this gaping wound will be healed by prayer? The adults around me seem to believe that, so maybe it's worth exploring. Versus, fuck it, everyone hates me, burn it down. That's the difference between me at 7 and me at 17, but that's me. That's my point. What is your truth? What was the turning point for you when you stopped trusting in yourself and you started to give it over to the rest of the world to decide how you should be, what you should think, what you should wear, how you should show up every day, and what you should believe? Did you have your wound stitched up by a professional, or did you just pray that it would heal itself? There's no right or wrong answer. That's not what I'm ultimately saying here. Nothing's gone wrong in my life. No one has wronged me. I don't hold grudges or animosity or resentment. Instead, I carry gratitude for my lessons. My journey is my own, just as your journey is yours. There are many of you listening who have it far worse by age 7 than I could ever imagine, if we are comparing scars. But we are not. I'm not comparing scars. I'm simply recognizing the imageries and analogies of our stories. We are not here to compare the despair, to say my life is worse, your loss is greater, to trash our parents, our teachers, or our gurus. We are here to acknowledge that every life has its own unique journey, and how beautiful is that? I just think that sinking into my 7-year-old self, I can really see how wise she was. She trusted, yes. She also questioned a lot. And not in the judgmental way that set in from that point forward and from every angle and perception, but from an authentic, pure, and curious way. What if we could access that part of ourselves still? The part that has not yet been wounded. The part that hasn't yet developed or even understood distrust. The part that doesn't use her past or some contrived legacy or the perceived future of her children to build her worth, but simply understands that just by existing in the first place, she is worthy. the one who sends gratitude to her parents for making their own mistakes along the way and simply comes to understand and embody the notion that nothing has gone wrong here. Not in this moment, not in that recollection, not in observing that scar. Nothing has gone wrong. It was always supposed to be just like this. As Rumi says, open your hands if you want to be held. So yes, there are many days that I want to snuggle with and comfort and hold and embrace my inner child if I see her as the wounded one. But what if I also see her as the strong one, the defiant one, the one who speaks her truth and questions without fear of repercussion, who doesn't worry about anything but living a life of joy and abandoning all cares other than seeking that joy? What if that is the wisdom that we all seek? The wisdom that we had when we were 7 or younger, before we were broken open, just running through the field, full on sprint, just having fun. Don't let the things that have gone wrong in life prevent you from seeking more of those sprints to joy. That's what I think our inner child can teach us. How to get back to that knowing that you are worthy and to trust your own intuition, your own inner wisdom beyond the shadow of a doubt, and just be joyful, beyond happy. Have fun. Live this life the way your soul always intended it to be lived. Yes, like that. I hope you're enjoying these explorations with me. If you'd like to connect, you can find the link to do so in the show notes. I love having real conversations, and I absolutely welcome the opportunity to do so. Until then, light up, shine on,